Hello there, I'm Nick, and this is Portable, where we look at the portable ports of console games. I love Vigilante 8, like a whole bunch, but I've actually found it quite challenging to find a decent video review of the Dreamcast version of Second Offense, which I take great offense to, so expect to see that game on this channel again in the future. Now, if you missed it back in the car combat heyday, this weird subgenre was everywhere in the early 3D days. Made famous by Twisted Metal, Vigilante 8 came in to give that series a run for its money, bringing better graphics, realistic physics, and I use that adjective very loosely, and, my favorite part of the games, fully destructible environments. Everything blew up real nice, and for the time, very realistically. Vigilante 8 and its sequel quickly became some of my favorites, and even though there was a story, I really couldn't tell you what it was. Honestly, I don't even think I've won more than a handful of matches. These games are tough. I just had fun rolling around and blowing stuff up, and I'd argue that these environments are what helped make it stand out from Twisted Metal. So how on earth were they going to bring that destructive satisfaction to the Game Boy Color? Well, as you can see, not very well. There's a reason why you don't see reviews for this game, and that's because, well, there isn't much to say. This is about as stripped down of a version of Vigilante 8 as you can expect for a 8-bit handheld. They really should have called it Vigilante 8-bit, that would have been precious. But with that said, it does what it needs to do. The game now takes place from a bird's eye view. You pick out your vehicle of choice and pick one of the recreated maps from the console version, and not all are here. I'm noticing a lack of my favorite, the Ghost Town. But even if it was, well, look at this. I know the Game Boy Color isn't a powerful machine, but it can certainly look a little better than this. And what's worse, but not unexpected, you can't wreck the map or really interact with it at all. Still, they try to play around with the elevation on occasion with hills and the like, but it sometimes doesn't do a good job showing you where the elevation changes happen, and even that aside, you're probably going to find yourself stuck a lot. And if you're hoping for an 8-bit rendition of the series staple groove, well, you have little luck here. No music in any of the stages, except for that crunchy version of the main theme on the title screen. And you still get digitized voices of the characters, yay, but that gets annoying very quickly when you start getting spammed with special attacks. There seems to be a lot of focus on these characters. They even adorn the cover of the game, which is strange because, well, who's buying these games for the characters? It's not like there's a story mode here. There's an arcade mode, a road trip mode, which is basically just a one-off match, and I think a couple of survival modes. There's really not enough difference in any of the modes to dive in and get dirty with. It's all the same boring, badly controlling car combat on one of the only 5 arenas. But there's still a couple of gimmicks here that might have helped pass the time back then. The cartridge itself had a rumble feature, and it supported the link cable if you had any friends you wanted to play with. The game is bare bones, boring, and a poor replacement for the proper experience. But that's why we're covering it. This stuff happened all the time on the Game Boy, and that's what makes it so interesting for me. You want to know if I recommend this game? No, of course not. You're not a bored kid in the late 90s with nothing better to do. Now, make no mistake, this game is still playable. And if you have a soft spot for top-down car games, and more specifically, NES-era gameplay, who knows? You might have a good time. Honestly, with what they're working with, there's really not much more they could have done with this game. The top-down perspective works, the gunplay works, I even managed to win some rounds. This is about all you were going to get for Game Boy car combat. It's not like Twisted Metal was going to show up on this thing. We'd have to wait 6 years for the PSP to come out for that to happen. It's not a broken mess, it's not unplayable garbage, but what you see is basically what you get. And the more I talk about it, the more I kind of respect this little game. Bare bones, but the basic gameplay does the job. If this series had survived to the days of Game Boy Advance, it would have been nice to see these basic elements of a game, well, a little more advanced. As it stands today, this is the only portable version of Vigilante 8. Well, legally, anyway. If you have an interest in the 8-bit and you like this series, give it a shot. You'll have everything you'll ever need from this game in about 15 minutes. If you've never touched this series, do not start here. Play literally any other version because they're all dirt cheap. Well, maybe skip the XBLA version. I don't know. We'll have to get back to that sometime. Anyway, I'm off to play more of the Dreamcast version of Vigilante 8 Second Offense. I'm really upset they didn't make more of these games, and also that they didn't call it Vigilante 8-bit.